WWF WrestleFest made its way into arcades in the summer of 1991. Now, 30 years later, we have the official sequel to that game, Retromania Wrestling. In this video, I'm going to talk you through everything that Retromania has to offer, the roster, the game modes, useful hints, all the good and all the bad, to hopefully help you decide if this is a game for you. Right off the bat, I'm going to hold my hands up and say that I went into this loving the look of the game and the 2D art style, as some of the arenas look gorgeous, yet at the same time I was very apprehensive about the gameplay, as 2D wrestling games generally aren't for me. That said, after spending some time with the game, any apprehensions that I had about it were gone, as it's actually a lot of fun to play and can prove to be very challenging. Taking a look at the Retromania roster, the game offers up a total of 16 playable characters at launch, 6 more than the original WrestleFest. These characters include the Road Warriors Hawk and Animal, who were 2 stars that appeared as the final boss in the original WrestleFest, albeit non-playable. Therefore, Retromania goes one step further by allowing players to play as this legendary tag team. Speaking of legendary teams, whilst maybe not on the same level as Hawk and Animal, we have all 3 members of the BWO, with Big Stevie Cool, Hollywood Nova and the Blue Meanie. Alongside the BWO, we also have another former ECW star in Tommy Dreamer, who brings with him his own House of Hardcore promotion, which has its own arena. Representing the WWE, we have the current WWE star John Morrison, who appears in the game as Johnny Retro and is the main focus of the game's story mode. Alongside Retro, we also have former WWE stars Kurt Hawkins and Zack Ryder, who appear under their real names Brian Myers and Matt Cardona. Representing AEW, we have Colt Cabana, who also provides commentary alongside Ring of Honor announcer Ian Riccaboni. From the UK, we have the current NWA World Champion Nick Aldis, as well as the highly rated independent star Zack Sabre Jr. For fans of older stars, we have Nikita Koloff, who is best known for his time in Jim Crockett Promotions and World Championship Wrestling, and then we also have former NWA star Austin Idol. Completing the roster, we have 2 big current names, with Jeff Cobb, who is a big star over in New Japan Pro Wrestling, and independent star Warhorse, who most recently appeared in AEW. One of the biggest compliments I can give Retromania is that the environments featured in the game look absolutely gorgeous. Rather than including bog standard rings and arenas, all of the environments featured include a high level of detail that leaves you wanting to look around and take in what's going on, as the developers have done a great job at bringing these environments to life. In total, there are 13 different arenas to choose from, with almost every character having an arena that is tailored to them, such as House of Hardcore for Tommy Dreamer, NWA Power for Nick Aldis, Stevie Richards' Gym, Warhorse's Hell, Austin Idol's Universal Wrestling College, and even an arena for the Major Wrestling Figure podcast. As you can expect, the gameplay featured in Retromania is a throwback to the days of WrestleFest, and it features a very similar style, which can be very daunting on your first play. To get to grips with the gameplay, the best thing that you can do is jump straight into the game's story mode, as this offers up a short tutorial that goes over the basic moves that you'll need to get started. To summarise, players have 3 different types of moves that they can perform: light, medium or strong. Rather than jumping straight into a match and going all out with strong attacks, alongside the move offerings is the addition of an LMH bar, which is displayed next to the player's name. This bar determines the type of moves that a player is able to perform, as the beginning of the match sees players restricted to the use of light moves, which when used will begin to fill out the LMH bar. Once the bar reaches M, the player can then perform medium moves. Once it reaches H, they can perform strong moves, and once the bar is completely full, then this will allow them to perform their finisher. The good thing about this system is that it encourages players to use all types of moves rather than just relying on strong attacks, and with each level of attack featuring 4 different moves, it encourages players to try out all of the different moves in a player's moveset. One of the things that I was most apprehensive about was how hard it would be to initiate these grapples, as from my experience in previous 2D wrestling games, I generally found it quite difficult to line up with the other player and perform a move. However, one thing that Retromania does best is automatically initiate a grapple once players get close. Effectively, this solves the problem of having to line up players perfectly to perform a grapple, and it makes things so much easier, as once the grapple animation kicks in, players just have to time the press of the grapple button to try and win control. If you time the press right, then this will see the player flash green and place their opponent into a standing hold where you can then decide on a move to perform, or Irish whip your opponent into the ropes or the corner. Whilst this system is really easy to use once you get the hang of it, unless you play the story mode first and you complete the tutorial, there's no explanation of how the system works, therefore players jumping straight into a match will find things somewhat confusing. Even when choosing to play the story mode and completing the game's tutorial section, it still leaves a lot to be desired, as it doesn't go into much detail, instead giving players a quick overview of the buttons and then leaving them to figure out the rest. As a result of this, one thing I have little to no idea about how it works is the reversal system, as this wasn't covered in the tutorial, therefore I was left randomly bashing buttons during moves to try and reverse them. Also not fully explained is the finisher system, as although you're told that you can perform a finisher when the LMH bar begins to flash, there's no indication of how to perform finishers or what button you need to press. Rather than having a separate button for finishers, which I think would have been a better option, instead a finishing move is inserted into a player's moveset in place of one of the strong grapples, which, unless you know which move it replaces, makes it hard to find. Making this even more awkward is the fact that some finishing moves aren't performed from a standing position, as Johnny Retro's is performed from the corner, therefore you're best looking up the finisher's situation and the button combination for the player that you're using prior to playing a match. One of the best things about Retromania is the game's story mode, which sees you play as Johnny Retro and enlist the help of Stevie Richards to help you get back into ring shape following a devastating injury that was inflicted by Zack Sabre Jr. The premise of the game's story is to get back into the ring and take revenge on Zack for the injuries that he inflicted, with the story seeing you travel to various locations where you'll meet up with multiple stars from the game's roster, including the BWO, Nikita Koloff and Jeff Cobb, to name a few. In between matches, the story's told through text, with characters appearing against various backdrops, some of which looked like they were a little bit out of place when I played it, as they only covered half of the screen. However, the story itself is quite entertaining, and it even features cameos from various online personalities. In total, my playthrough of the story took around 2 to 2.5 hours to complete, which is quite short. However, the mode does have some replayability to it, as there's multiple points in the story where you're given multiple choice options on what to do or how to react, with these choices then leading to different outcomes and even a different ending. Without giving away any spoilers, I really enjoyed the story and I thought the length of it was fine. However, the option that I chose at the end of the story left me feeling a bit unfulfilled, as it didn't really bring any closure to the overall story. That being said, had I chosen the other option, then I feel that may have been the better ending, although it does give me another reason to play through it and see how it differs. Alongside story mode, Retromania also offers up £10 of gold, which is a tower style mode that sees the player play through 5 matches on the route to facing NWA champion Nick Aldis for the NWA Championship. Rather than all singles matches, this mode keeps you on your toes by offering up 3 and 4-way matches, some of which are elimination, whilst others are a single fall, meaning you always have to be on the lookout for someone going for a pinfall. The 5th match of the mode will see you challenge Nick for the NWA Championship in a 2 out of 3 falls match, which, if you win, will see you crowned the new NWA Champion. Rather than end the mode there, there's also an additional 5 matches that take place after that match, in which you'll defend your championship in various matches before then facing off against Nick a final time as he gets his rematch. Much like the story mode, which featured animated characters to tell the story, £10 of gold features a similar setup with Nick Aldis cutting promos. However, the difference here is that Nick's scenes are all voiced by himself, which is something that works really well, so it left me wondering why they didn't do the same in story mode. Alongside Versus, story mode and £10 of gold, Retromania also includes a Retro Rumble featuring up to 16 players, 8 of which can appear on screen at the same time. Of all the modes and the match types, Beast 1 is by far the most challenging, as the default settings see players enter the ring every 10 seconds, which leads to a full ring of stars in around a minute. Unlike a traditional Rumble, which sees eliminations occur when being thrown over the top rope, the Retro Rumble also includes the option to pin or submit your opponent, offering up multiple ways to win. Overall, Retromania is a lot of fun to play and a very challenging game that I really enjoyed, but it does take some getting used to, as the first few matches that I played I found myself getting really frustrated at the game and not knowing how to time grapples or perform finishes, but after taking the time to get used to the gameplay and working out the timing and how it works, ultimately I ended up really enjoying it and finding the gameplay system to be quite clever. In short, I think Retromania is off to a great start, and it's a solid game that doesn't try to do too much and stays faithful to the original WrestleFest, offering up what I would say is a better game, but long term I do feel the game is missing one or two features that could prolong it, such as online play or custom characters, but that's something that we could see added further down the line, as the developers have said that they'll look to expand the offerings depending on the game's success. So there you go, that's my thoughts on Retromania Wrestling. If you played it, let me know your thoughts in the comments, and if you haven't, let me know what you think of this review and whether it's a game that you would be interested in. Until next time though, thank you so much for watching, subscribe for more wrestling games content, have yourself an awesome day, and I'll catch you later.